All right. Let's take a quick look at some different economic systems. Now, at the beginning of the year, we kind of talked about how economics was all about making choices. Well, let's be a little more specific about some common choices that societies face, like big countries have to face. And the three big questions that we have to ask is, what are we going to produce and how much? Um, how are we going to produce the stuff? And who is going to receive the goods and services that we produce? Now, let's start with this first question. What are we going to produce? We have limited resources. We have scarce resources, so we can't make all the things. So we have to make decisions on, okay, what is important to make and what's not. Ideally, we're going to produce what people want the most. And we're only going to produce up to the point where marginal benefit equals marginal cost. Because we've talked about if we produce past that point, and suddenly marginal cost is higher than marginal benefit, then we're missing out. We're losing more than we're gaining. And the opposite's true as well. If we don't produce up to that point, there's further benefits that we could be gaining, but not, we're further benefit that we could be gaining, but we choose not to. So this is the ideal. This is something called allocative efficiency, where we're using our resources in an efficient way, where we're benefiting as much as is possible. Okay. The other question we have to ask is, how are we going to produce the goods? If I'm building a house, am I going to do it all by hand? Am I going to use a tractor? Am I going to use tools? Okay, I have to ask myself all these different questions. Now, ideally, we want to achieve something called productive efficiency. Now, productive efficiency just means we're making it as cheap as we can. Now, when I say cheap, I don't mean quality. I mean, we're giving up as few resources as we can to achieve this thing that we want to produce. This is the ideal. We don't want to waste all of our resources when we're producing things. All right. And then finally, we're asking the question, who do we want to receive these goods and services? And how much are they going to get? Now, this is the one that's going to cause a fight, okay? This is super controversial because this has big consequences. We want to know, okay, who's going to get the stuff? And everyone wants themselves to get the stuff, or they at least have very emotional opinions on who these goods and services should go to. Now, I'm going to talk about this in two kind of broad-based categories. I'm going to talk about a merit-based system and a need-based system of kind of distributing these goods and services. Now, a merit-based system, people are receiving goods and services equal to the value of their production. In other words, if you produce more, you deserve to consume more. Because, hey, I'm giving more to society, so I should receive more from society. There's a certain amount of fairness there. I hate using the word fair because fair kind of depends on who you talk to, okay? But that's the idea behind a merit-based system. Now, the major upside of the system, other than, kind of some perceived fairness here, is that it gives an incentive to produce as efficiently as you can. And I'm not saying just to work hard, because there's lots of people who work hard and they don't accomplish anything. I'm saying to work hard and smart, because if you're working hard and smart and you produce efficiently, then you receive more goods and services. So there's this built-in incentive for efficient production. And that usually leads to a larger economic pie to split up because we're producing more. Now, the issue is a lot of times people aren't able to produce the same amount, and there's lots of reasons for this. Sometimes this can be just something about how you were born or the way you were raised, or that you started off in a really lousy spot and it was really hard to change those circumstances. Sometimes something just really bad happens, a medical accident, where all of a sudden you're really unable to produce the way you were supposed to produce before. There's lots of different things that can lead to where people aren't receiving, kind of in the same department of how much they're receiving. This also means there's no safety net for a crisis. If something really bad goes on, and people are only receiving what they're able to produce, if something happens where they're not able to produce, too bad. They can't receive those goods and services. And that really discourages risk-taking, which we've said is really important for things like entrepreneurship. It encourages people to really play it safe, which isn't really good for economic growth. And just from a moral perspective, it can create humanitarian crises, starvation, homelessness. If you're not providing healthcare, there can be death from preventable illnesses. There's groups like children, mentally ill, disabled, who they're not going to be able to produce like everybody else, but we can make the argument that we still want to provide for these people. Okay. Again, these are all, tricky arguments. And we talked about how you need capital to build capital. It's very hard for poor folks to build capital, which is what you need to be able to produce more efficiently. So it can lead to this cycle of, only the rich people are able to produce more, and so they receive more and become more rich, and it becomes this feedback loop. So basically, this economic pie, this big pie that we've been able to make because of efficient production, it's not being split up very evenly. Okay. The other system is kind of a needs-based system of distribution, where we kind of go, okay, well, what do people need? So let's give the people what they need. And in a lot of ways, this can be seen as a more equitable system. People are receiving goods and services proportional to their needs, which potentially could stave off some of these crises, can bring people out of poverty, but there's some significant problems here. I feel bad. I didn't mean to have like a small list of pros and a long list of cons here, because that doesn't really tell the whole story here. With needs-based, it's really hard to figure out what people need. I say, oh, well, I need this, this, and this. And someone else says, well, no, I need this. And, there's all these arguments. And all of a sudden, there's an incentive to look very needy. We see this even now with certain government programs. It's beneficial to look poorer for a lot of scenarios. When you get older, it actually benefits you if you trust your family members to get rid of your assets as quick as you can, because you look suddenly very poor and you look like someone that the government needs to take care of. It also can harm incentives for efficient production. If everyone knows they're getting the same thing, then all of a sudden there's not the same incentive to produce as efficiently as possible. You're going to get the same thing no matter what, and so that can harm production. And if we have less that we have produced, we have this smaller economic pie to distribute. So not having very much to go around, this can actually create some of the humanitarian crises that we talked about before, because people aren't working hard to produce all the stuff. Okay, so that's kind of a summary here. Let's talk about these 3 questions one more time. So we have to figure out what we're going to produce, how we're going to produce it, and who gets the stuff. These are the big questions that these economic systems try to address.